I am grateful that we have fought against genocide and that we promise to continue this struggle, but it is not enough. As you know, we often came late to aid victims of genocide in Rwanda and Darfur, for instance. And we have not fully acknowledged our own role in genocide. We have not acknowledged that one of our founding pillars was the genocide of Native Americans. I'm speaking to you right now, partly and regrettably, as the beneficiary of genocide and slavery. Not to admit this undermines my vigilance, our vigilance, against becoming co-conspirators to genocide in general. And yet, I also acknowledge the amazing and heroic strides our nation has made in the struggle for equality, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. Our mistakes do not delegitimize our great accomplishments, but they do mitigate them as a guideline for perfectibility. Today, there is a new threat which many around the world call terrorism. But the greater threat is our own ignorance. This is true of all of us around the world. When we refuse to understand the cultural, historical context of others, when we refuse to understand their intentions and their profile, we enable terrorism. Isn't know thine enemy an obvious strategy against terrorism? Ignorance enables people to alter the word of God, wave the banner of religion or the banner of patriotism, to fulfill political agendas not founded in altruism. And many will wave these banners to satisfy their rage. There are people whose rage against us poses a true logistical threat. We must deal with this now, but for the long term we must seek to understand it, for there is no contradiction between accountability and understanding. Accountability gets rid of the symptom, but understanding gets rid of the cause. Just as criminals must be held accountable to safeguard society, we need also to understand the root of their crime and their rage for it to disappear. Unfortunately, accountability simply postpones the next occurrence. Understanding eliminates it altogether. And so terrorism might be a threat in the short term, but our ignorance feeds its existence in the long term. Perhaps nonviolence could not have halted Hitler's armies, but nonviolence certainly created him, for it was hunger, desperation, denial, apathy, and prejudice that created Hitler, not military power. I think it is unimaginative, in hindsight at least, to think that reflection, awareness, prosperity, knowledge, and activism could not have prevented his armies from existing in the first place. I agree that we must not forget the courage of past generations whose labor and blood brought us freedom, nor should we dishonor their memory by violating the freedom of others. I agree with you wholeheartedly that we can't insist that others follow the rules if we refuse to follow them. I commend your statement that when human rights are not protected, peace is a hollow promise. Because justice could be defined as, don't ask of others what you don't expect of yourself. I agree with your statement that America's interests are not served by the denial of human aspirations, or by ignoring the rules we demand others to follow. Yet this is exactly what we have done in so many cases. You say that regimes that break the rules must be held accountable. Does that apply to us as well? Really? So how come we support governments that repress people, conduct collective punishment, and undermine elections? We require Iran to give its nuclear capability up, even though we toppled their democracy and invaded their neighbor for no good reason. Additionally, we support Israel's nuclear capability while helping it to deny that it has any. You yourself have not acknowledged Israel's nuclear capability. Doesn't this beg the question, who will protect the world from us? So if you are wondering how the conflict in the Middle East has hardened, we might take a look at our own prejudice, ignorance, and denial on all counts. But when all is said and done, like yourself, I still have faith in us, and I still have hope in you, and I wish that we could all hear the call to disarm. I refuse to condemn our imagination to an eternity of unnecessary conflict. I hope that as a nation and that as a global family, we can start to choose excellence over dominance and altruism over greed, that together we might truly be free, even from the burden of our own ideas. And so I leave you with some thoughts from the Tao Te Ching. Violence, even well intended, always rebounds upon itself. A great nation is like a great man. He considers those who point out his flaws as his most benevolent teachers. He thinks of his enemy as the shadow that he himself casts. Thank you for listening and for your kind indulgence.